If you were a soldier in the middle of a battlefield, out of supplies, you'd basically be as good as dead. To survive, you'd need food, water, and ammo before the enemy realizes you can't fight back. Your battalion is nearly surrounded. There's no clear escape route. The odds of making it out alive are almost zero. But just when everything feels lost, an Allied plane roars overhead. The cargo doors swing open, and the wind screams through the hull. Troops and crates of supplies are lined up inside, ready to drop. Someone gives the signal, and with that, your last hope begins falling from the sky. A crate parachutes toward the ground. Seconds later, soldiers start jumping out one by one, disappearing into the smoke-filled air. In an instant, a single pilot changes the course of the entire battle, giving your allies the final push they need to defend their country. But how can a massive aircraft fly into enemy territory, drop tons of gear and troops, and not get blasted out of the sky? And how has this strategy evolved into one of the most precise, powerful, and stealthy operations in all of modern warfare? Before planes dominated the battlefield, resupplying soldiers was painfully slow. You had to rely on horse-drawn wagons, railroads, or long convoys that were extremely vulnerable to ambushes. As wars grew larger and battlefronts stretched across entire continents, traditional supply lines couldn't keep up. So the military had to develop a new way to deliver supplies worldwide. That's when the airplane changed everything. At first, even the military wasn't sure what to do with aircraft beyond reconnaissance. But necessity forced innovation. The first combat airdrops happened in the early 20th century. During World War I, they were primitive, small bundles of ammo and food, sometimes just pushed out of fragile biplanes, with none of the precision we have today. These were desperate attempts to keep isolated troops alive. In 1915, during the siege of Kut al-Amara in what is now Iraq, British forces found themselves completely surrounded by Ottoman troops. Ground reinforcements couldn't break through and supplies were running out. As stomachs growled, morale crumbled. Suddenly, the British tried something no one had done in warfare before. They used Royal Flying Corps aircraft to drop bags of food and ammo to the soldiers trapped inside. It was rough, the drops weren't precise, and many supplies missed the mark entirely. But they proved something important. The sky could be used to save lives. World War II begins. When World War II erupted in Europe and the Pacific, airdrops had gone from desperate experiments to a massive logistical tool. The Allies took the concept and scaled it up. Some aircraft, like the C-47 Skytrain, became legendary, not for their combat capabilities, but for what they could carry. From troops and supplies to even light vehicles, these aircraft dropped what was needed to keep soldiers alive and moving. Most impressively, entire battalions could appear behind enemy lines overnight. One of the most iconic uses of this strategy happened during World War II. Hours before the amphibious landings on Normandy, thousands of Allied paratroopers filled the night skies, aiming to secure bridges, roads, and towns behind enemy lines. These brave men were the spearhead of the Allied invasion. Without them, the entire D-Day assault could have crumbled before it even began. But the Allies didn't just drop soldiers. They also dropped crates filled with ammo, radios, and food. These airdrops helped make the campaign a major success. They might sound simple, but they're anything but. The science behind airdrops. You see, there's an entire science behind how, when, and what to drop from the sky. Because a poorly executed airdrop can cost lives and waste valuable military resources. To achieve the level of precision required, military logistics specialists spend months training to master the art of aerial delivery. First, we've got low-velocity airdrops. They are what they sound like: slow, gentle descents. They transport sensitive equipment like medical supplies, electronics, artillery components, and vehicles. I probably don't need to explain why you can't just drop a tank from 10,000 feet, right? As with any aerial operation, it takes finesse. These airdrops use massive parachutes, sometimes multiple, to ensure the cargo lands smoothly instead of slamming into the ground. It's basically the military version of sending a fragile package. If the crate survives the wind, the weather, and enemy fire, the mission can be considered a success. High-velocity airdrops. Next, we've got high-velocity airdrops. Imagine this. Your troops are pinned down behind enemy lines, dying of thirst, hunger, and low on ammunition. They're taking heavy fire. You don't have time for a soft delivery. You need to get those supplies to your squad, preferably without getting blown to pieces. That's where high-velocity airdrops come in. These use smaller parachutes, or sometimes none at all, allowing the cargo to hit the ground much faster. They're designed to deliver durable goods like MREs, meals ready to eat, heavy machine guns, and other gear packed in impact-resistant containers. Of course, you can't forget the boxes of ammo. Some might miss, but most will hit the target in seconds. High-velocity drops are also harder for enemies to intercept. The faster the descent, the harder it is to shoot down. Plus, the aircraft can fly higher and stay safer while dropping the load, a major plus in hostile territory. Freefall airdrops. But what if you need to drop more than one gear? What if you're sending in people, highly trained elite soldiers, on missions that most wouldn't survive? That's where freefall airdrops come in. We're talking Halo, high altitude, low opening, and Hey-Ho, high altitude, high opening, jumps. These aren't your average parachute landings. If the military decides to deploy these troops, things just get serious. In a Halo jump, soldiers leap from up to 30,000 feet and don't open their parachutes until they're close to the ground. Why? Because it keeps them hidden. That's why the aircraft stays high and out of range while the paratroopers remain invisible until the very last second. Then you have Ha-Ho jumps. In these, the parachute opens almost immediately after the jump, letting the paratrooper glide silently for kilometers, sometimes up to 30 kilometers, to the target zone. Ha-Ho is perfect for sneaking into heavily defended areas without anyone noticing. They require an expert pilot and a highly trained soldier who knows what they're doing. Most enemy forces don't even realize they're being approached until it's too late. Beyond the battlefield, these jumps are also used for sabotage missions or hostage rescues. What kinds of drop methods are used? There are several drop methods, each designed to fit the mission. For example, extraction drops use parachutes to pull the cargo out of the rear of the plane. In this method, an extraction chute is deployed behind the aircraft and yanks the load out while slowing it down. It's the preferred method for low-velocity deliveries. Gravity drops rely on the angle of the aircraft during flight. The plane tilts, and the cargo slides or rolls out at just the right moment. Door push drops are the simplest of all. They depend entirely on the loadmaster giving the right shove at the right time. GPS-guided airdrops. One of my favorite types, though, is GPS-guided airdrops. These systems use GPS, steerable parachutes, and onboard computers to guide the cargo with stunning precision, often landing within just 30 to 100 meters of the target. In other words, the plane can drop supplies from miles away without ever entering contested airspace, while still making sure the cargo hits its mark. Some systems even allow in-flight corrections, adapting in real time to wind, terrain, or sudden changes on the battlefield. They're kind of like a mix between a drone and a glider. These kinds of airdrops are also game changers for humanitarian missions. They can deliver food and medicine to disaster-stricken areas that have no roads or functioning runways. It's easy to take this tech for granted, but it's the result of decades of trial and error and life-saving innovation. Every rope, chute, and box has been tested under the harshest conditions imaginable. There's zero room for failure when lives are on the line, which is why every mission calls for a different aircraft. The Lockheed C-130 Hercules is by far the most used and iconic plane for airdrops, both for cargo and troops. It's been used in over 70 countries, dropping everything you can imagine, from food and ammo to Humvees and paratroopers ready to fight. It always gets the job done through dust, smoke, and enemy fire. However, while some, like the C-130 Hercules or C-17 Globemaster, are built to carry massive loads, other planes, like the MC-130, are designed for stealth and can operate deep behind enemy lines. If you like this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed, because next time, we're diving into the aircraft themselves and how they make all this possible. With that said, what kind of airdrop do you think is the hardest to pull off? I'll be reading you in the comments.